recorded. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As I said earlier, my name is Tanya, Ashby, and I work in the school, so I'll wait now. So, the other thing I want is, this is a participatory presentation. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to be the only one talking. So I want you all to feel free to share your comments, your feedback, your suggestions, and to participate in the activities. So, and then we'll have fun. We'll all learn and we'll all grow together. So I am, as I said, the 4th through 8th grade social worker at the Pittsburgh King. And this is my 4th year at Pittsburgh King, and I'm learning and growing so much because the students are teaching me. I'm also a student of Pittsburgh King as far as learning, and I'm glad to be here. But before I go any further, I do want to say a word of prayer so that we will sort of set the atmosphere and be prepared on one accord. Father God, we just bow and thank you and give you all the praise and all the glory because you're so awesome. You're so worthy of the praise. And Lord, word my mouth, and Lord, we want to honor you, Lord, as this presentation goes forth. We ask that everyone here receives it and not only hear it, but also apply it so that it will glorify you and help our community. We love you, we praise you, we thank you, we magnify your precious name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, so our topic today is how a student's demographic can change their environment and affect their school day. And then I said their life, not just their school day, because it's not over when they go home from school. So here's the first activity. You're like, what is she going to do now? If you are wearing glasses, I want you to change seats with someone. Now you're going to come back, so leave your stuff. There's a whole purpose for this. If you're wearing glasses, change seats with someone. Even if you take your glasses off, change seats with someone. You sure? Well, you're not wearing glasses. I couldn't figure out why. So this is our first activity.
We switch hair off.
But there's a purpose for that. For those of you who are wearing blue, change seats with someone. Even if you just change seats with someone.
Why are you picking on me? If you are left-handed, change seats with someone. That's how it is.
If your birthday is in October, anyone? If you are wearing contact lenses, anyone? Change seats with someone.
Change seats? Let's go.
If you are a twin or have twin children or have twins and your first cousins, change seats with someone.
What about your parents?
Change seats with someone. Twins? And now you may go back to your original seat.
I just did.
Welcome back.
So I know that our topic is how. I'll wait. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time. I need someone to be my timekeeper. So when it is about 1:45, because someone let me know that's when we'll have more time for some discussions and questions and stuff. So I know that our topic is how the environment affects our children, but it affects us as well. So who has any idea why we did all those changes? And I'll help you out. Yes. Is it Rich?
Rich.
Okay, yes, Rich.
Each one shows how something over which we had no control affected our lives.
You better get out of my notes.
Are you getting press?
Exactly. Because we get so comfortable, whether we come to a classroom and we have our designated seat, we're so used to having that seat, or we go to church, hello, and we have our same seats that we sit in every Sunday. And if somebody is sitting in our seat, we're not really able to praise the Lord. We're like, she's in my seat. Right? So we sometimes have control over some things, but sometimes we don't. And when we have to move, especially when it's not our idea, our feathers get a little ruffled, we get a little uncomfortable. And I waited till some of you all sat down. As soon as you sat down, then I said, change these again. We sometimes don't have control. And when our students come to school, they show up with a lot of things that they have no control over. So there's anger, and you have no idea what they're coming to school with. So that, as opposed to talking about how the environment affects our children, I want to demonstrate that for us to feel that and have that experience, because I think it becomes more real. So I want to read a poem that is written by Dorothy Law Nault, and it's probably very common. It's called Children Learn What They Live. It says, if children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with fear, they learn to be apprehensive. If children live with pity, they learn to feel sorry for themselves. If children live with ridicule, they learn to feel shy. If children live with jealousy, they learn to feel envy. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with tolerance, they learn patience. If children live with praise, they learn appreciation. If children live with acceptance, they learn to love. If children live with approval, they learn to like themselves. If children live with recognition, they learn it is good to have a goal. If children live with sharing, they learn generosity. If children live with honesty, they learn truthfulness. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children live with kindness and consideration, they learn respect. If children live with security, they learn to have faith in themselves and in those about them. If children live with friendliness, they learn the world is a nice place in which to live. So there's a lot of ifs there. And we know that this is talking about an ideal world, but this is not always the case with our children. Sometimes it's the complete opposite. So now here's what I need you all to do to help with making this more real. I have 18 items on this table, and I need for people to shout out a number one at a time. And when you shout out a number, I'm going to ask you to come and take that number, read what's on the card, and then I'll give you further instructions. Any brave volunteers? Yes, is it all right? Offie, okay. Can you come and take a number, please? And if you can walk this way so we don't look. Okay, thank you.
Sir?
Would you like me to say it?
I'll let you come on up here. Come on up here. Nice and loud. Yes, ma'am.
Just the word.
Yes.
Hunger.
Hunger. Okay, now what I need you to do is to take this marker. Now this is going to represent our children that we serve, and I want you to put a mark anywhere on this body. A mark, like a big enough for us to see. Anywhere on that's the head or the body. I'm not an artist. I don't even pretend to be one. But just anywhere on this body.
That represents my word or just the word?
Anywhere. Anywhere. Thank you, Offie. Let me get another person to pick a number. Come on up here.
I'll do 18.
Okay.
Unknown, undisclosed.
Okay. So, and I'll explain that as well. So let me go back to the first one. The first one was hunger. When our students come to school, even though breakfast is offered, we don't know if they've had breakfast. We don't know if that's the first meal they've had since lunch the day before. So when we as adults get hungry, how do we act?
Angry.
Yeah, we're not the best people to be around. So when you're hungry, that's something that you have no control over at that moment. If you're a child, you don't prepare your own food many times, and sometimes food is not available. So they're coming to school already angry because they're hungry. And we don't always know that because they don't tell us that, but we see how they react. They're angry, they're fussing, they're sometimes cussing, they're physically aggressive because they're hungry. Number 18 was chosen by
Nancy.
And so there's many ailments that's unknown. We have 17 more, but there's many unknown. We may not even know what's going on, but they may get the brunt of their frustration, their anger, so there's a lot that's unknown. We're not going to have time to do all of these, but a few more. Let me get some more volunteers to come on up and choose a number, which represents some of the things that our children and even our adults are going through. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Loss of health, death.
Yes, loss of health and death. Put a God bless you. Work on that. So with loss of health, perhaps our children living with a primary caretaker who could be their great-grandmother, because maybe their mom is not there, maybe through death, maybe incarceration, maybe abandonment, we don't know. But when there's loss of health, that's also a loss, because that person who they've been dependent upon, who they've been connected with, who they've trusted, is no longer able to, bless you, no longer able to be there for them, or maybe because of death. So that's another loss. And we have another mark. So these are just a few marks that our children are coming to school with. Let's get a few more. We haven't had, let's see who, yes, come on up. We have a few brave men in the audience, and we'll get a couple of them next.
I didn't have to get up when you did the moving, so I
Oh,
okay. Nothing to mind. Mental illness.
okay. Let's talk about mental illness. So mental illness seems to still be a taboo. You know, a long time ago, if you had a family member that had a mental illness in your family, you didn't talk about it. You sometimes wouldn't allow them to come out in public because what? We were ashamed. We didn't know how to handle that. So because there are a lot of mental health services available, there's support available, but people sometimes are so hesitant to get them to the facility that they need. So mental illness can be a block. And it doesn't always show up in the way that we expect it to. Thank you. A few more volunteers. Come on, Rich.
I figured since I'd already answered one, I shouldn't have to do
I
anything else.
appreciate that, okay. Oh, but you were wrong.
I usually am. I was married. Lack of mobility, lack of transportation.
Okay. So many times our families don't have transportation, and we think that when a parent can come to school for a parent meeting, we sometimes think they're unmotivated, they're uneducated, they're not committed, and it might be because they don't have a way to get there and don't know how to navigate the system to get that support. So we chalk it up and we think that they're not connected. And that may not be the issue at all. Okay? We'll do 3 more. Okay. For the red.
Unresolved and reoccurring trauma.
Okay. So trauma takes, in fact, any of these can be considered trauma. Thank you. Here's some more. Thank you. Oh, okay. Choose one that's working. Oh, okay. Trauma takes on a lot of different definitions, and it also manifests itself in many different ways. A lot of times when our children are traumatized, they don't have the words to say, my mom just cussed my dad out, my dad just came back from jail and beat my mom again, whatever the situation, they don't always have the words. But many times we can see the effect of trauma, there's reoccurring trauma, and then there's unresolved trauma on many different levels. So our students are traumatized because of what they've been through, and then when you begin to interact with them and they tell you the stories of what's happening, you become traumatized as well because you're right there listening, and you sometimes feel helpless or hopeless because there's nothing you can do to change their past of what they've gone through. Okay, the woman in red. Tell me your name.
Jill.
Miss Jill, making choose one.
Abuse of trust for lack of trust.
There are times when our children are not very trustworthy because many times the adults in their life have let them down. And they're going to say to themselves, what's going to make you different? Why should I trust you? My mom couldn't trust her. My dad didn't know him. My grandma, she's on drugs. And this is not for every case, but they are sometimes very hesitant. Trust is earned over a long period of time. And then there's also times when they're going to test you to see if you really are going to be there for them. Because you may have shown up 3 or 4 times, but so did mom, and so did dad, and so did somebody else. So the testing is going to go on, and the testing never ends. Now they may drop their defenses a little bit, but that's a very difficult thing for them to do, is to trust someone after it's been broken, especially when they've been so young. So let me get one more person to come up and take one, and then we'll just flip the rest over and I'll say what they are.
Malnourishment.
Malnourishment, okay. And that's very similar to hunger, but malnourishment means that they haven't eaten for a longer period of time. And because of that, the brain needs nutrients to be functioning. And there's a lot of times when our kids have not eaten in a long time because it hasn't been made available. Now, I know that there's a school lunch and there's also a school breakfast, but many times it doesn't meet their need. So with malnutrition, it manifests itself in many different ways. And once again, we feel helpless and hopeless.
I'm seeing how many of them don't even get to school till late anyway.
Yes, yes. Haven't gone to the doctor for any updated, physical exams and a lot of things. I totally get some. Unclear boundaries, physical illness, substance abuse, homelessness, trauma, helplessness, sexual abuse, physical abuse, dysfunctional families, and then I call that challenging families, because sometimes the word dysfunctional is labeling them as if it's a child's fault. There's no perfect family, so we can all fit into that category. So I call it challenging families / challenging communities, because we're all there. We have a lot to learn. Child Protective Services. A lot of our students either are involved with CYF or have been involved with CYF. And with many of them, it has not been a positive relationship. We're trying to make it, we're trying to mend it, but that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. Because many times, it has not been the child's fault, but they've been victimized. If something's happening in their home, and of course it's not the child's fault, the child is then removed. When you're removing someone, they're feeling that, well, what did I do? I was just a child. They're removed from the home, placed with someone else who they may not know, may not like, and now their whole world has been changed upside down again. And then they have to change seats because it's a new routine for them. And it's not always welcome, and often no warning. It just happens sometimes in the middle of the night. So that's frustrating. So think about that, kind of sit in that for a little while. Sometimes we've been removed from our childhood because now we're grown-ups and we have the ability to make some money, make some choices, move on, and then things are working in our favor. But we forget about our children sometimes. We need to kind of get back to that. Any questions, any comments at this moment? You guys are quiet for now. So I want to talk about some things that we can do to help men. We can never erase what our children have gone through, but what we can do is help to fill some of those gaps that they have to help them function better. So we can look, we can listen, we can learn, we can laugh, and we can live. What I mean by that is when you're interacting with our children, look around. Look at where they're coming from. Look at them. Give them eye contact. One of the most important things that you can do is learn a child's name and pronounce it correctly. Because when you do that, you are making a deposit in that child. You're making a deposit by saying, there's nobody in the world like you. You are unique, you are special, and I know who you are. When you say that, because we have a lot of children in our school that have very similar names, and the spellings are very different. So when you make that investment in that child and you call them by name, they say to themselves, that's me. They may have 9 or 10 siblings in the household, but for that moment, they feel like they're the only one. So something as simple as pronouncing a child's name and saying it often too, because everyone likes to hear their name. Like Miss Jordan, right, Miss Jordan? Yes. Because she's my coworker and my colleague, and we work well. So I think it's important to know that when you make that investment and make that deposit, the child says, okay, so they've taken time out to know who I am. I'm going to kind of listen to them so I can know who they are. It's a give and take. Listen to what they're saying. Not just the words, but also the expressions and also what they're emphasizing. Because children want to have someone that they can connect with, who they can talk to, and they will tell you a lot of information, sometimes too much information. But listen to what they're saying. Listen in a non-judgmental way, in a non-critical way, but allow them to share with you because they want to be able to connect with you in a way that says, I matter and that you matter. So be able to look, be able to listen, but also be able to learn. Learn about their environment, learn about their goals, learn about their mistakes, learn about their parents. They may share with you their parents and their guardians, and they may ask you, what about your upbringing? They know that there are some differences, but embrace those differences. Don't shy away from them. So have that ongoing conversation while you're interacting with them. Those are deposits, and those are important deposits. Laugh. Laughter is healing for the soul. I don't know about you, but I make sure that I laugh every day. It's fun to have a good laugh because it's good for you. Our kids need that. Sometimes our children have forgotten how to laugh, and so it's good for you, health-wise. So make sure that you find something that's humorous, not at their expense, but something that you can mutually enjoy. And live. Talk about where you've come from, some of your experiences, and allow them to take you on a journey of where they've come from as well. Any questions? Any concerns? Any feedback? Yes.
I can't tell you, I was raised with my grandmother, so last year I had a little girl who was living with her grandma, and she was feeling bad about that until I told her that I'd been raised by my grandma. You should have seen her face change. She was so amazed, and it was like we established an instant bond there. And so every time, I came after that, it was always a hug right away. She knew, and I guess it's like, I lived, so you're gonna live too.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's so important. Whenever you talk with our children, ask them what their goals are. Some of our children don't believe that they're gonna live past 18 or 25. Why do you think that's their thought? Absolutely. They may not have anyone in their family who's lived past 60. And they may think, oh, that's old. But they haven't seen that. Some of them have, but some of them haven't. Because if you talk to them about their goals, then you can help them to realize that they can live longer. A lot of times they have no control over that because of their environment, but you want to give them hope. You want to give them some encouragement so it can happen. But a lot of times they'll say, well, why should I plan to go to college? Because my grades aren't good, I don't have any money, I may not live. But we want to give them that encouragement. Connect them with those who have done that so they know that it is hope. It is hope. What about some of our children who are in foster care, or some of our children who are living with people who have mistreated them? They're very sensitive, and they are very, as I said before, non-trusting. Our children come to us with different types of issues. When children have been sexually abused, they may not come out and say that, but there are signs. And so whenever you're working with children and you have any concerns or questions, always let the people know at the school. Because you may not know, but something has happened to that child, and we have to further investigate. But some of the signs would be if they are certain language that they may use, certain posture that they may use, and sometimes if they're not clean. Those are some signs that something has happened. We don't always know the specifics, but there are some signs that things have happened. So let the adults know at the school that I'm not sure, but here's something you may need to look at because it could save that child's life. Whenever we talk to our parents about the children in youth services, they get very guarded. But we're mandated reporters, so we have to report anything that we suspect. We don't even have to ask any questions. And sometimes it makes it an adversarial relationship between the school and the student, the school and the parent, but we're liable. We have to call things in. And what I try to do is we try to have sessions with parents by saying, our job is to keep your children safe. If we suspect anything, we don't have to call the parent, but sometimes it's a courtesy, we can, and we try to guide the parent through step by step of what's going to happen next so there aren't any surprises. Because they will get a phone call and a knock on the door for follow-up, and we don't want them to feel like the school has betrayed them or has put them in an odd situation, so we have to. Children, I wish that we had a closer rapport with children and youth, but it seems like there's a lot of turnover with staff. And just when you think you've got a good rapport with a caseworker or a supervisor, they've moved on. Because those positions cause a lot of burnout. And I don't know what kind of supports they have to make sure that they're getting the support that they need, but it seems like they need to be stepped up a lot. Have any of you all had any contact with CYF or Child Protective Services? And has it been a positive relationship or has it been a need for improvement relationship?
It was not bad. I mean, we adopted 3 kids out of foster care.
Okay.
So we saw lots of caseworkers. And some seemed to be burned out just wanting to get things over with. And others took great interest and wanted to be Facebook friends and things. So.
Okay.
So it was a mixed bag.
Okay. There are times when our children are not on grade level, and so they're academically struggling, but they are embarrassed because maybe they're in the 2nd grade for a 2nd year because they weren't able to get their homework done. Perhaps they didn't have pencils at home. Or if they, and I've seen a lot of students when school is out, they'll have their pencils and they don't roughhouse with kids because if their pencil is broken, then they don't have a way of getting it sharpened at home and can't do the homework. And it sounds simple, but that has happened. And there are times when we need parents to sign forms, to sign documentation, and they may not have pencils, so we send home pens with the student so that mom, dad, whatever guardian is raising them can sign the consent form and come back. But many times, you know, the paper will come back, but the pens don't. And that's okay, because we met a need and didn't know that. There are times when our families may not have any type of spiritual connection, but that doesn't stop you from praying silently. And what I say to students is that I'm willing to pray with them, but I'll ask them, do you want me to pray with you? And I've said that to parents as well. If a student says yes, then they're willing. And many times I'm like, oh, thank God. Because it helps to calm me down and also help calm them down, and also allows them to know that I care about you. And I tell my students, even when I'm away, that I'm thinking about them and then I'm praying for them. And so whenever I talk to parents and I feel that it's going to be an adversarial relationship, I'll say to a parent that I have faith, I believe in God. I said, I don't know if you have faith or not, but if you want me to pray with you, I'll be glad. And there has been, I think, maybe one parent who said no in the beginning of a meeting, but at the end of the meeting, she found me. She said, okay, I'm ready for But I offer that because it's a way of saying to them, that's just who I am. I'm not going to force my belief, my faith, nothing on you, but if you're willing to have prayer with me, so am I. And so it tells that parent that I care about you. There are times when our parents have grown up and they really haven't been nurtured and taken care of, so they have the same need, sometimes more of a need, than their children. So when you see the parent come into school and you see the student come to school, they have very similar needs. And so I know we're not to judge, but we're to provide that support for them. And many times our parents are very appreciative of that. There are times when our children have sticky fingers because they feel that they see something that you have and they want it, and we know that it's wrong, and they know many times that it's wrong. So they may take things, you know, whether it's your wallet or your cell phone, and so when that happens, to let the staff know at school, and let them know that it's not acceptable and that there is a consequence for that. So we have to teach, and we have to model, and then we have to keep teaching, because we can never assume that they know right from wrong. They should know right from wrong, but sometimes they don't. It's based on what they feel they need at that moment. So we have to be patient, we have to be caring, we have to be loving and giving unconditional love. I know that's difficult, it's challenging, but that's what we're required to do. If we're going to be Christ-like, he did a whole lot of things that we think, wait a minute now, but that's my goal, to be more and more like him. And when but when I fall short, I have to remind myself that I'm human, I'm striving to be more like him, and then get back on that horse and keep moving forward. So share with me some things that children have, from our table, things that our children have experienced that may be too difficult for you to deal with. Were there any of the 18 that we named that kind of struck a chord with you by saying, oh, I could never deal with that? Or that may be very challenging to deal with? Yes.
Because I just want to know how to deal with it. I was in school the other day and a little girl was coming in late and she's just sitting on the stairs going, I'm hungry. I'm like, so I know you missed breakfast because you're just now getting here. Other than me going, I understand,
Right.
Is there how to respond to that?
That's such a good question.
That kind of goes with, they all seem to need hugs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And when you walk into, first grade and they all need and want hugs, I feel frustrated for the teacher who is trying to maintain order.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
is there a suggestion on how to come in and not suddenly disrupt the whole classroom?
Yeah, so when you walk into, so what's supposed to happen is that the teacher knows you're coming and they know what time you're coming. So what they can say is that so-and-so is coming, here's how we respond to our guests coming in. We're not going to bum rush them, so to review of that. But even though they know that they're supposed to wait for the person to come in, they get so excited, because it's like, that person's coming from me, and that's my special person, and so we're trying to, it's the same kind of thing when we have like assemblies, we have expectation that when you have an assembly, how are we supposed to sit? How are we supposed to enter the cafeteria? So we have these behavior goals for students, so we just have to review that more, so that when you come in, that they don't attack you, but it's still in order,
So I'm trying to practice the silent wave.
Yes. Yes. Do you enter into the classroom when you come in, or how do you get these students?
I'm also a teacher's helper, so
Okay,
I've
okay.
already been there like all year.
Okay,
So.
okay.
But it is, like each time I walk in,
Yeah.
what did you call it?
Bum rush.
Bum rush.
No, they come to y'all and say something, yeah.
Yeah.
And even too, when you come into kind of like, this needs to be quiet, hold your hand
Yeah.
up for them, because if they're coming towards you, and what I always would do is, you want to empower that teacher, because if the teacher has said, should not be out of your seat, you want to say, Mrs. So-and-so said you need to be in your seat,
Right.
follow direction, like reinforce that, so that they know that you and that teacher are on the same page. Because they'll try to divide you, I'm telling you, they'll say, but she's here for me, but to tell them, I'm here you can tell them, you're able to come when Ms. Harris says you can come, or Ms. Bynum says you can come, so they know that you're on that same page with that teacher. So to think about that, yes.
It's one for
Oh, it is, okay. And so we can use this time for some more questions and answers. Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
I just wanted to share from a teacher's point of view, because I've been that teacher who, have had volunteers come in and mentors and that kind of thing. I think it's just important for you to stop and ask the teacher some of those things that you're worried about. So when I come in, is it okay that I spend the first minute kind of giving a little rub on the back to everybody in the class before I take just my one special, so that everybody can kind of feel special? Some teachers might be open to that, and some people say, no, I'd rather not, I'll just have this system. Or, is it all right if I just chat with the kids for a few minutes? They can ask me a question or two, so they all kind of come to know me. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with the teachers from whom you're picking up students, and just see if there's a way that we can all work together on that for the benefit of all the kids in the room. Something else, when we're sending our kids out and we're thinking of you as academic help, and certainly a lot of today's trainings are about the academics, right? But we also know that we're kind of setting you up in a mentor situation. Don't be afraid, if you're allowed to take them for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it is, don't be afraid to spend that first 5 to 10 minutes on the non-academic. Some of the things that Ms. Ashby has been sharing with us today. Build that relationship with the kid. Bring a board game from home and spend 5 minutes playing that board game. Or bring the coloring sheets and just have that open conversation. One thing that came up in an earlier session we just had, we talked about the mistakes that can sometimes be made. We were talking about like working with words and syllables, and sometimes maybe you make a swear word as one of your syllables, right? That's just a funny moment that comes up in the classroom. Go with the funny moment that happens. Be real to these kids, because very often, as Ms. Ashby spoke about, when they don't have a trust issue, they also don't trust themselves very often. And so these are often the kids that don't want to take a risk, and they'll just shut down. But if they can see us being real and that we are all flawed as well, right? So take a moment and have that laughter with the kid about that. Make that mistake in front of, oh my gosh, that was so silly. Purposely put some mistakes in to what you do, because there is nothing better than a non-example to teach, right? So do it behaviorally, do it academically, whatever, and talk about it. But yeah, take that time to bond with them. It's okay that they spend 10 minutes in some fun and then 20 minutes on their academics,
That is so true. Thank you, Jordan.
Sure.
There was an example of that would be, there's a teacher, Ms. Bynum. I don't know, for those who are at Pittsburgh King know Ms. Bynum. Ms. Bynum is she's a kind person. She has a big heart, but she's no nonsense.
Yeah.
So they were doing some spelling words. This was last year, and I believe that they were spelling the word truth. And so a student put an F in it, and Ms. Bynum said, "Get the F out of there." Mrs. McCord, the principal, just happened to be doing an observation of the She laughed so hard. Because you have to go with the moment, Ms. Bynum realized when she said it, so Ms. McCord pointed and said, "Oh my goodness!" She got no harm, no foul. But you have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, then our children won't know that it's okay to laugh. Laughter is good, laughter is healthy when it's the right time. Other examples or other things that you might be anticipating or feel challenged about? Have any of the students that you work with, have their parents say anything negative about, I don't want my children in that program, or was it, because it could be a jealousy type of thing, it could be an unknown, like I don't know what they're learning, or you're teaching a kid something that the parents should have taught, but that they don't know how to teach. So any conflicts with that? Have any of you all had that?
Well,
Yes.
one thing to say with that is I've had students that will, kind of talk down about their parents or talk about the negativity at home, or my mom never would do this or say this, or and so there's that awkward tension of what do you set, like how do you, encourage and say and build up the parent so they don't have a negative view. But, what would you advise in that situation?
Probably less is best.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I've never met your parents. I'm sure that there's some qualities about them because I see qualities in you. And then move on to talk about them. You don't want to dwell on that because they may have a very unhealthy or maybe a very adversarial relationship with the parent, and they don't want to even talk more about the parent because it's embarrassing. But I would just say something like that. I'm sure that there's some qualities about your parents or your guardians because I see a lot of qualities in you, and then to talk about them to help them to feel more comfortable about who they are. So when we had taken these words and we had put the X's on the diagram, that just shows that it's almost like bullets, and I hate to say that, but when our children come to the door of the school, they're wounded by so many things that we're not even aware of. And as I said before, we may get the brunt of their anger, their frustration, their embarrassment because these things have been dealt to them and they don't know how to navigate. So we just support them as best we can and encourage them to let them know that they're okay. That we're not going to judge, we're not going to criticize, we're going to give them unconditional love, and then we're going to come back for the next time to make that commitment live for them. Any other questions or comments or suggestions?
The one thing that hit me when I first started tutoring, I'm guessing like a second grader in math, and he did his work, and I said, oh my gosh, you are so smart, you are so good. I don't even think about it. Like, it just came out of my mouth. Yeah. And there was another boy, I was doing, 2 students, yes. And the boy that I said that to, all of a sudden sat up super straight, and looked at that other boy and said, did you hear what she said? She said, I'm smart. Aww. And that, I just take for granted that these kids get positives, but that showed really quickly that they're not always used to that, and how much just that was just a word, and how it changed his demeanor immediately.
Absolutely, yeah. Words have power.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we would say things like this: sticks and stones. What's the rest of that? And that's a lie. Right. It's because words do hurt. We have in our memory whatever our parents or guardians have said to us, and that recording is still going on, the positive and the negative. So words do hurt. The physical pain sometimes go away, and the marks sometimes go away, but the words, they never go away. And so no matter what you say to them, you want to be able to say positive things to them so that they can have a new message in their head, and they begin to believe the positive one and not the negative one. So sticks and stones may break my bones, and words will hurt me. So, okay, yes.
Sometimes if children are doing really well and they're catching on and they're just excelling, I will even plant seeds like, wait till you go to college and how much fun you're going to have and how much you're going to learn. I just want to plant those seeds for them.
Yes,
seeds of
absolutely. And to also explore other avenues, because every child may not may not have an opportunity, but I'll say, well, wait till you graduate from high school. You might go to college, the military, trade school, but you're going to be fabulous. So give them some options as well. There was a young boy who I was working with on yesterday, and he has had so much trauma in his life. He's now a 5th grader. His mom committed suicide last year. And prior to that, he had been shoved around between an aunt and an uncle and kind of like back and forth, back and forth. And I believe that he's blaming himself for his mom committing suicide. So the gym teacher said to me that this student has scored the highest on the physical test. And so when I saw him about 5 minutes later, I said to the student, I said, I just heard something fabulous about you. Do you want to hear what it is? And he said no. Oh my goodness. He said no. Because he was probably afraid that it would be something that, something positive, but he doesn't know how to handle positive, or that it was going to be something that, he couldn't live up to. But he said no. And I was like, wow, it kind of just shocked me. Yeah. So I had to think about, he's been through trauma, still going through trauma, because now he's living with an aunt who's struggling with him because he's having some behavior concerns. So, and I think, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure he knows that he had done well on the test. I'm going to write it and give it to him so he can read it. So he'll still get it, just in a different way, yes. And I'll probably put it in a bag with some potato chips or something. Right. No bag, so he likes potato chips. So sometimes we have to take like non-traditional approaches, go outside of the box, and reach our students, because that's what being, a Christian or one who loves Christ is all about. You know, taking the approach that works best. It's not like pantyhose. One size does not fit all. I put my contact information up here if you guys want to contact me or call me. I didn't have any handouts because I think sometimes with handouts, not know what to do. People sometimes look at handouts, and even though I've written up things I want to say, I have to wait for the Holy Spirit to say, okay, take this avenue, you know, trying to be obedient to Him as well. So, but thank you for your time and thank you for your listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.